I clicked the live button, and it's just me, so everybody thinks it's just me here. So, yeah, there it is. How about we? Yeah, it is.
All right, are we doing this?
Let's do it.
All right.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the PHP Roundtable.
Also, episode 37 of the PHP Town Hall. Thank you for joining us tonight. We have a rock star fucking panel for you here.
Let's see who we got. You guys want to introduce yourselves?
Hey, I'm Josh Lockhart, creator of the Slim Framework.
I'm Ben Edmonds, who you're tired of seeing.
I'm Sammy K with the PHP Roundtable guys.
Sammy K, what you see?
I'm Phil Sturgeon, off of PHP Town Hall and whatnot.
I'm Matthew Weir-Finney. I'm just this guy, you know.
I'm Mike Stowe, another guy that nobody knows. Sad.
I know you now.
With an IMDb profile.
Yeah. Give me the mic. I am.
Here's Mike.
Well, give me the mic. Hey, how you doing?
Code of conduct.
I just asked the man I was doing.
Who are you?
I am Sarah, and I am on my way to drunk.
All right, we are live to you tonight from the Sunshine PHP 2015 conference, and let's do this.
Yes.
Hold on, there's also one more. There's also one more member of the group to invite.
People here. Woo! Sunshine
Hold on.
PHP people.
We have one more person joining us tonight remotely because he could not make it. Possibly the most important person on this panel.
Davey, you're so small. Sorry, Davey, you're so small. I didn't see you there. There we go.
Now, this is a monumental occasion because for the last 2 years we've been doing PHP Town Hall. We've had a very strict no Davey Shafik policy, and currently the policy is being waived because he snuck on here and I didn't realize.
I snuck in through the round table. I told you I had to start my own podcast, and this was easier.
Introduce yourself, please, Davey.
From Engine Yard, and I'm home in Tampa, Florida.
Riveting.
You're in Florida and you're not here? Sunshine PHP is in Florida, FYI.
We're gonna start naming where places are in the world now, I guess. So.
What's our topic?
Florida is actually like a really small city.
Right. So actually, we're done, and thank you very much for joining us. We'll see you next week. So today, seeing it's a bit of a mix of the two podcasts, we're going to try and combine the two styles. Roundtable is very much open question situation. That's what Town Hall was meant to be, but no one ever asks any bloody questions. So our theme for the Town Hall was going to be API development, and we have a few people here that are involved with API stuff. We also will be asking questions from the audience. So should we start with questions and then bang on about APIs later, or do you want to start with API stuff and then get there after?
Let's start with questions.
I mean, I asked you an A or B question and you said yes.
Let's start with questions and get an API question to start us off. How about
a
that?
little bit. Anyone got an API related question?
Yay.
I'm gonna go with Gary because I like him more than Luke.
Do you think you should have done the planning for the show before you actually started the show?
Have you ever listened to the PHP Town Hall?
No.
That is against our rules.
Wait, it's against the rules, and yet you planned one, and you brought me on? What the hell?
I was not involved in the planning aspect of that.
The question from the audience was, do you think we should have planned this at all? The answer, of course, is no, because that would be ruining the consistent theme of the PHP Town Hall podcast. Although the roundtable is usually fairly well planned, so I'm not entirely sure why he agreed
We are
to sign up with
dragging
us.
Sammy down to our level.
It's okay. It happened on episode 3, the Worst Con Special, so we're used to it.
You see how the pros do it now, Sammy.
So I'm going to reverse my choice about which I prefer between Luke and Gary, and I'm going to ask Luke what his question is.
What do you think we could do to get people to code to link relationships instead of URIs?
Well, I'll take that one.
Yeah, we need to make it as simple as possible, is what it comes down to. So it means modeling it somehow in the language or having userland models that make it simple. App agility is something I work on, and that's actually exactly what we wanted to do, is to make that as dead fucking simple as possible. And I just dropped the F-bomb.
Thank you, Mr.
For Gary. Yeah. So yeah, no. So it's I did it exactly. This was exactly the thing we wanted to do. We don't want people to have to think about it, and in fact, it's an implementation detail for most people. And then they gradually learn and go, oh wow, I've got these links. What are they? They ask us, or they read the documentation, and they start understanding how that works. But if we make it as dead simple as possible, that's the easiest way.
I think just to add that too, people need to understand what REST is. Like people talk about these APIs and what they're building, but unless you truly understand what you're building and how REST API works, you're not going to take advantage of things like hypermedia or this little known code on demand aspect either.
Just one other thing, Phil reminded me. Avert Pot has been starting a new proposal process for the Framework Interop group, and it's actually around links specifically. And so we're actually trying to find just an interface for linking to make that easy in PHP, make it something that people can just code to very easily and tools can code to, and then you can start figuring out how you're going to represent it based on what you're doing.
The question over there from Evan.
Yeah, so we're seeing this huge revolution on the server side for APIs as far as making it nice and easy to create these links and all sorts of other fun hypermedia stuff. Are we gonna start seeing the same momentum on the client side, taking advantage of all this really cool shit that we're doing?
So yeah, if we can try and keep our questions short because they need to be repeated and there'll be a 1 minute gap of silence.
In other words, fuck you, Evan. but thank you for the sponsorship, which we will get to momentarily.
So the question was about there's a lot of work being done to work on linked data with the server side, but also the client side is that too. Evan, is that about right, or are you talking about the beer that you would like to get now?
How about you walk up to the mic, Evan? Let's do this.
Yeah, that's a good idea because we can't really hear it.
Yeah, people walk up to the mic.
Over here.
Edit point at 21 minutes 48. Evan, come and ask the question again.
Yeah, they're sponsoring. We'll get there.
All right, so my question, while Gary's taking beer orders on my credit card, is
just hold on a minute. We're gonna edit it. We're gonna edit this whole section. Just hang on a minute. We're gonna edit this out. It's fine.
Dave,
We'll do it in post.
we will tell you when you should stop editing when we get started back. I'm sorry, man.
This isn't being streamed live at all.
okay.
Yeah.
I like that I'm not the one messing it up though. That's fun.
All right.
Oh no. Uh-oh.
Oh, this guy!
That's trouble.
Okay.
All right, focusing.
Jeremy.
I never knew.
All
right, so
point now, Evan's question.
the question that Phil tried to figure out was tried to dodge was we see this whole revolution on the server side for APIs and all sorts of fun REST stuff, hypermedia and those types of standards. But when are we going to start seeing, or are we going to start seeing the same type of revolution on the client side of the API thing and consuming and taking advantage of all these links?
Yeah, so I think the way that that's being done so far is there seems to be a large movement around the JSON API standard. Now, the JSON API standard is something that I personally really hated for a long time, and I kept bumping against it, and it's very focused around CRUD applications, and the REST API isn't just purely CRUD. They have things like, post must be create and put must be update, and all these really specific rules about, you must have an ID on a put, and that's not always true. There's a lot of problems with the JSON API standard, but it is the best option that we have for a standardization of these things. So whilst I personally have always been more a fan of embedding related data, much like Facebook did or does, they change it every week.
Nah, Sarah.
I'm being fun. Whilst embedded versus sliding and all these various things, the JSON API standard is the best standard that we do have, and we are starting to see it being picked up very heavily by the client-side community. So Ember.js are very, very, very involved with JSON API. It's a lot of the same people involved in making it, and both Rails and Ember.js are very interested in taking JSON API and using that as a standard. So whilst they don't, yeah, I know. The weird thing about How is that I was looking at a blog post about the guy that originally started off How, and he was saying it looks like How was done just as a random experiment in someone's afternoon. The way that he described it was like, we really need to start making linked data be more of a thing, and so I decided to try and make a standard, and then, oh look, I did one, and now we're done, and it works. And it seems more like a kind of a half-assed thought than is the person in the room? Is the person in the room? Is it Mike Stowe? Is someone?
Yeah, I don't
Hold
want
on.
to disagree, but
Mr.
I'd
Mike
have to say
Stowe
that.
has an interjection.
Yeah,
To
I have
those that don't
objection.
know the rules, sorry, we did not say. If you want to speak next, please raise your hand. That helps us do an easy transition to the next speaker.
Yeah, no, I have to disagree. I think JSON API is a good spec out there, but HAL is definitely one of the most recommended specs out there as well. And if we give that a lot of credit, I think one of the biggest challenges for people using hypermedia isn't the hypermedia.
There's a certain word you could use that would stop all this
You know
right
what?
now.
Be focused. I have a safe word.
Yeah.
Yeah, Aaron's here. So with that, I think our problem is we haven't figured out hypermedia exactly. Like we have these linking aspects here, but it only tells the machine so much what they can do with it. So I think as hypermedia, extends and evolves, we're going to see more clients having more options. But the first step is to get more APIs taking advantage of it so we can learn from it and get things to take care of it. And Sarah, seriously, what do you think about this?
I disagree with everything you just said.
That's from Facebook.
All right. I would also like to introduce, we were just joined by Miss Erin O'Neill.
Hello, Erin O'Neill here. Oh my God, there's a video. Hi, Davey. Yay. I'm a little confused though because you guys are talking about programming, and I was just led to believe that's not at all what we were doing here. Okay, cool, perfect. That's better. I feel way more relieved now.
I usually have a solid rule for conferences that after 8 o'clock I don't know what a computer is, but I'm breaking it purely so we can hang out and talk about this stuff.
Also, I'm unclear if we're doing PHP Town Hall or the Roundtable.
Yes.
This is far more roundtable because if this were town hall, we wouldn't be this organized.
Fair enough. But I have had the
PHP Round Hall is the official name for this evening's antics.
I've had the Town Hall song stuck in my head for like an hour though. Ah! I must have just heard it psychically.
So, who has another question for this wonderful panel?
Mr. Cal Evans.
Oh my goodness, Mr. Kyle
Hi there.
Evans.
Hi there. Mike, in your talk, you made the statement, if it's not hypermedia, it's not REST. Defend.
Nice.
So I'm going to make this really easy. REST was defined by Dr. Ray Fielding, and in his blog he said, look, if you don't use hypermedia in your REST API, it's not REST. I don't care what you call it something else. And if you look at like, I did mention it though. And actually, if you look at the REST constraints, within the sub-constraints of the interface, hypermedia is one of the constraints that he has in his dictation.
So another interesting way of putting that is if there's a few articles around called the layers of REST, and I think it's called like a swamp of POCs or something. Yes. Take it over.
No, yeah, I know all of these. Yeah, the first level of maturity, it's the Richardson maturity model, and it's the level 1 is a swamp of POCs, which is you're doing post with XML, and that's why it's POCs. It could be JSON, it could be YAML, it could be whatever you want to put in there. But the idea is that you're just doing post as your method, and you're throwing crap at it, and it comes back. It's completely non-cacheable, and so you're not doing a great job with that. And you're also always going to the same URL. Every time, it's the same URL. So you have to transmit information about what you want to actually have done. Level 2 is you're going to start using URLs, which is really cool. That's great because now we're not having the same URL for everything. Level 3 says, okay, let's go a little bit further and actually use HTTP verbs for what they're designed for, which is fantastic. But level 4, which is the top, level 3, it's 0, 1, 2, 3, sorry. Because we're programmers. So level 3, So level 3 of the Richardson maturity model is hypermedia. So you've done all these other things, and now you add hypermedia linking, which is what HTML gives us in the first place, right? And so it's just taking that to the API level.
The only negative feedback I've seen about the Richardson maturity model is that it suggests that there are multiple levels of RESTs. There isn't. It's binary. It's either REST or it's not. Whether that matters or not is a completely separate question. But the Richardson maturity model, words are hard, is that if you have hypermedia, then it's REST, and if you don't have hypermedia, then it's not. You have to reach level 4 or 3. You have to reach the top level of their maturity model to be REST. Otherwise, it's not a thing. Everyone's having a quick awkward pause because there's a few jokers at the back that decided to start waving and dancing. Hello there, Erica, Heidi, and
We're not going to name them, but their initials are Anthony Ferrara.
All right, I'd like to take a quick break to thank Rove, our sponsors of tonight's podcast.
Woo!
They had supplied the drinks, and they are going to slip me $100 after this is over. And if you need software development, please contact them.
Is this the first time we actually got a sponsor?
It was actually Sammy's fault that someone trusted us with tonight. Yeah.
The guy with the hot dog hat says Aaron.
So should we field another question, sir?
Let's do it.
Who's got a question?
Couscous. Question time.
Yo, if you don't ask a question, then I'm just gonna start talking about my turtle for a while. So.
I have a question. Where's the alcohol?
Anybody can answer this, or multiple people can answer this. How do y'all feel about patch, and which specification for it do you prefer?
Patch does not exist.
No. Patch exists. You know what I like because you helped me with that agility. There's two different models that I see. One is that you have some sort of specification, and it's like a command, a set of commands that you're going to execute. I hate that because it's freaking impossible to implement, and it's really impossible for the clients even to try and code for. So I like the idea of it's, hey, this is a portion of the representation that I want to change, and that's where I go.
I have a dumbfounded look on my face because all I know of patch is the command line utility, and you must be talking about something else.
Yeah, HTTP patch. So HTTP patch is the least respected, known, cared about verb in the HTTP world. And what's really weird is that so put and patch are both used to update a resource, and the way that they are used to update a resource, or that they can be used for other things, it depends on a bunch of different stuff. But one of the most common confusions is that because they can both be used to update a resource, that they must both be the same thing. And something that frameworks like Laravel do, and something that Ruby on Rails also does, which I'm getting fixed for an upcoming version, is the routing system. If you use like a RESTful resource route and they kind of set up all the get, post, put, delete stuff, then they end up, you look at the routes table, and it has like put/patch equals this URL, and that's really messed up. Rails and Laravel both, along with many other frameworks that I can't think of right now, they both treat them with this exact same thing. They both route them automatically to the same controller method, which is just really bizarre. And they're meant to do two different things. Put is going to be, here is the entire resource, save this entire item exactly as this is. This is completely idempotent because I can do this 100 times, and you always know what the entire exact answer is. Whereas patch is going to be like, I want to change a status from this to the other. I don't want to have to send every single field in. For the easy example of, imagine updating a profile on your mobile phone and on the website, and you change your biography on the website, and then you change your username or your email address on your mobile phone before that has been pulled down. You're going to start undoing changes that you've done before. Thank you very much there, Gary. That's impressive.
No,
Thank you
I've
to
never
Rogue
even
for
heard about
sponsoring tonight's
patch
podcast.
until just today, and that sounds pretty effed up.
Oh no, this is okay. Good.
Like that, you don't do that. You don't treat a put and a patch as the same thing.
It's really common.
That is effed up. That is. Hold on, let me grab a verb. That is functionalist up.
That was very offensive, sir.
Yeah, comment.
Come on.
So, I understand the difference between put and patch, because patch, like you said, is for making an update to a record, which you only send limited data. Like, I only want to update the name, I only want to update the address. But your statement was that frameworks like Laravel and others map put and patch to the same thing. Well, that is nothing to do with, that's them. I mean, they could be handling them properly. Like, you patch something, it only patches the two things, and they just route to the same controller because that's how their underlying ORM works. So, hating on it for that is more of an implementation than it is for its usage, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
So what he's really asking there is that it's an implementation detail. It's not necessarily the framework's fault, right? But it's up to you to use it correctly. Yeah. So I would basically agree with you. It's kind of back to the question of should frameworks do everything for you, or should they allow you to fuck up if you want to, really? Right? Yeah, for real. Yeah.
might take it over and do what you're supposed to do anyways. And why would you implement two methods if your ORM's configured before you?
So the point there, the follow up to the question was that certain frameworks might default to doing things in a certain way, but you probably have the option to make them work how you want yourself, right? And absolutely, you definitely can. So I can handle put and patch completely separately in my Rails and my Laravel application. I'm experienced with both. I know how they work. But that sounded sarcastic. I wasn't trying to be a person there. The problem is that they do that by default. So there's a lot of people that don't quite know how this stuff works, and as soon as they see put and patch equals the same thing, and that's how it works, then they assume that's how it works. So every framework that defaults to doing something dumb, and then you can like change it and then not do the dumb thing, it's still a problem because they're doing a dumb thing in the first place. So you always have to be very cautious about the framework defaults, and if they are doing that, then you should talk to them. I've been talking to the Rails people on the core Rails team. I work with one of the core contributors who's very much responsible for the Rails API code that's gone into 4.2, and actually made Rails a great place to make an API. Sorry, I'm at a PHP conference. Please don't kill me. But he's been working on these features, and I kind of explained our API that we make right now. We don't actually have any patch functionality in there. Because also Ember.js is a little bit behind on that stuff too. But our entire system, if we want to update a record to change a status, we have to use a put request. We're missing off loads of fields, and we're basically using put like it's patch, because the Rails API gets well confused if we try and do it differently. And whilst we could mess around real hard with the system to make it better, it's just too much effort to do so. So I don't hate either framework. There is no hate towards either of them for doing the way they do their things, but they are objectively wrong, and that's quite damaging for the community, because people that don't know more than the framework developers are assuming the framework developers know more than they do, and they're looking at them saying, oh, then I must be wrong, and they're doing bad things because of that.
This is a PHP conference. There's plenty of room for hate on the Rails framework. We're okay with that.
All right, next question, please.
I'll take this. There you go.
We're running a little bit low on the questions, so I'm gonna throw one out to Mike. So Mike, you did a
Ralph was standing up to take the question.
That was so rude.
edit point number 75. Ralph, could you pop up here and ask a quick question?
When this is not just for Sarah, this is for drunk Sarah.
Okay, that works. Jason's popular. So when will PHP natively decode JSON when the content type of the request is application JSON?
Oh, are you asking? Sorry, are you asking about whacking JSON into post if that is the content type?
Yeah, like
he is.
If somebody posts JSON and says the post content type is text JSON.
Yeah, why not?
Write the code, submit the pull request.
Okay.
All right.
Well, what would it be converted to? I mean, we're talking about like an array, a collection
No,
of what?
just it would just running JSON decode.
Yeah, you would just JSON decode
JSON
it,
decode.
and it winds up in post. That seems reasonable to me. I'll vote for that. Let's make it happen.
Anthony is violently
reasonable as well.
disagreeing.
So hang on, we're gonna wrap Anthony up here in 1 second, and whilst he's walking over, I'm gonna have a quick response. The trouble with that is that if you start whacking JSON body into the post super global, then what happens when they put JSON? Do we have to add a put super global? All of these things are. The way that PHP currently handles HTTP stuff is not necessarily the best in the world. It represented the world at the time, but currently it's a bit different. So if we continue down the line of trying to whack it into the system that it currently does, then that's not the best way.
I completely agree with you there. Like from a
That's the
pure
first time that's
standpoint-
ever happened.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Everybody, I completely agree with Phil Sturgeon on this point. Like, it's sloppy that we put all this crap into post, and we put other stuff into post that are not post. But this is PHP and YOLO, and we don't give a F. So What is the worst thing that's going to happen if we take JSON encoded data on a put request and throw it into post?
We need a PSR.
You still have raw HTTP data. It's a convenience. That's what all it is. And we named it badly. Okay.
Well, it
I'll
was
give you
named
that.
post because everybody—that's all we ever did.
All
back
we ever
then,
did
right?
was get in post. Yeah.
Yeah. So
that-
I mean, really, it should be like _body or something like that, right?
If it was query and form,
Well-
that would be close.
Or content or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what if we introduced content, and that is
-1.
what's in there, and in the case of post request, that becomes a reference to content.
Anthony
-1
is
bec-
chomping at the bit to answer this question.
-1 because there's a couple problems in here. One is multi-part MIME types. So one is multi-part MIME types.
All right.
So basically, the problem comes in where you may have one part of the multi-part content that's form encoded, one part that's JSON encoded, one part that's form encoded, one part that's a file, and one part that's some other weird encoding XML or something. And the second that you try to say, well, there's one body of requests, there's one hash table of results, all of a sudden, what order do you parse them in? How do you then merge the results together?
I have an answer for that.
Exactly, yeah.
When the top level content type is multi-part, when the top level content type is URL encoded form data,
There is no
you
top.
do what you do now. No, there is, of course, there's top.
Well, yeah. Okay.
A multi-part has a top level, and that top level is multi-part form data. Multi-part, whatever it's
It's
called.
multi-part form data, and then you get different parts.
And the
throughout
individual sections are individually content typed.
It's multi-part form data, or is it just multi-part?
there. It's multi-part form data is the actual.
It's multi-part something.
I know this really well right now.
Whatever it's called, don't get hung up on details here. So
Yeah.
when it's not a multi-part, it's really clear how you handle it. You just say, okay, decode it according to the right rule. When it is a multi-part, then maybe you have your content variable be a vector of all those elements. So the 0th element is whatever its type is, decoded appropriately, and the first element is whatever type it is, decoded appropriately. So you have an array of arrays, basically, is what you wind up with.
See, I don't like parsing at the language level things that the application should know about and should know how to handle. So I prefer something like the HTTP messaging, where the server level or the PHP level doesn't really know about the content, doesn't really care about the content, because the content is something for the application to interpret. You just hand a representation back to the application and then have cheap parsing tools or whatever to actually then pull apart that content in the application where it's semantic. So if in your application you want to treat JSON the same as a post, the same as XML, you can make that decision. But
okay, so by that logic, should we get rid of get and post and all those other kind of variables entirely?
for a certain type of code, yes. I wouldn't suggest pulling them from PHP simply because of legacy reasons, and because of the low end. If you want to write a procedural application, just use get and post. That's fine. You want to write a RESTful web service, use a micro framework or something like that ahead of it.
We were talking about this, actually, Anthony and I both were talking about this earlier today, because with the PSR7, the HTTP message interfaces, this is the one sticking point we still have right now is the body parameters. And right now, it has to be post, is what we've said, but usefully in APIs, it's completely unuseful. I don't know what's going on right now.
No, sorry.
Yeah, so it's right now, it's for APIs, dollar post is never even relevant at all. And so we have to do something differently. And what it's come down to is we know that we'll likely decode it into either an array or an object. It'll never be anything else. And so we're having to kind of make a compromise that it's mixed. It's going to be one of those two. Should it be something at the language level? I'm not actually sure. Because as he says, I may actually want to take that incoming object and I see it's Adam, and maybe I want to pass it to XML reader, and now I'm going to have an XML reader object that I want to use and pass around my application instead. So.
I don't think it's sorry. I don't have
Davey.
a hand.
You're still here.
So one thing to consider also is that you may not even want to parse it, right? So you get sent an XML blob, you may just want to store that as is. Why would you want to parse that into anything? So I really think you have to leave it up to the application layer.
Jeremy just cannot imagine. Did you know Davey was spying on us? Okay.
Do you internet?
All right. So what I'm hearing you saying is that our get and post variables make sense for legacy purposes, and they cover the really simple web apps that PHP does well and is really well known for. And then for something that is maybe a little bit more purely designed, something that's got a proper REST framework around it, we just leave that to the framework because they've got the raw data. And whether, as Davey says, they want to just store that data without parsing.
And we don't leave it to the framework, we leave it to the FIG group. Really. Didn't I fucking leave that place?
I have no idea why you came back. You opened yourself up to a whole sea of bullshit by walking back into that room.
I'd like to make just one tiny clarification on what you said. I agree pretty much with what you said. The one thing I would change is that PHP as a course shouldn't be opinionated around how you deal with that restful application. It can be
certainly not, but I think we should provide the APIs to do it easily. Like, isn't writing a full RESTful client, but they do want to deal with some of those types of requests. I think it should be really easy and straightforward to just say, process this multi-part data and just deal with the types that are in it and just give me something that I can work with as PHP.
And if that's a userland function, meaning like a core function exposed to userland, then that's awesome.
It doesn't have to be a request in it thing. It can be a userland function.
To quickly throw this over, I feel like this is potentially what the PSR7 is meant to be. Do you anything? Is that close, Matt?
It's partly that, but it's not entirely. I mean, with the body parsing, it's still going to be up to the application to figure out what it needs to do to parse the body. But one of the other things we talked about during the OnCon yesterday, Anthony mentioned that perhaps there might be additions to the language in terms of like functions, procedural functions that we can then say pass this in, one of the super globals, or in this case, the PHP input stream or something, and it would give back something that I can then seed my request and response object from PSR7 with.
Yeah, put the complicated stuff that's hard to do in userland, the string parsing, etc., like that. Expose those to userland via simple functions, so you can pass that multi-part body from userland back in and get a structured representation back out. But leave the stuff that's fast in userland. There's no reason that needs to be in core. There's no real benefit to it.
I have a question, because I usually ask questions on PHP Roundtable, because and this might be a Jeremy question, I'm not really sure, but how is HTTP2 going to impact the way that we write APIs today? Or will it? Is that a loaded question? I didn't even read that. Oh, okay. Does anybody know?
It's going to be
Nobody's
scary.
read that spec.
Nobody's read the HTTP2
So
spec?
actually, I think Matthew's got this one. I've mostly heard that HTTP2 is about the transport layer and less about kind of the actual message, so it's not too crazy nuts different.
Well, I think part of the problem, and I've read a little bit into the HTTP2 spec, and I read more of the Speedy spec, which it's based on. The problem is it doesn't really do that much with the content, but it interlaces content and streams. So you have to be able to prepare, like if you're writing a server, you have to be able to take in multiple streams at the same time and parse them at the same time, which could be two completely different requests. They come in interlaced on the wire. So if you're writing something like React or Node.js, it all of a sudden becomes a lot more complicated.
Davey, what's up?
I don't think that's something we're going to be dealing with at language level. That's going to be, Apache, Nginx. They're going to handle that for us. I don't think we're going to see that.
I think that's in today's model, absolutely. I would question whether that's going to be the model in 5 years. Potentially, I would even question if a lot sooner than 5 years.
Goodbye. Web servers in PHP.
It's PHP Roundtable.
I'm gonna mic
It
drop.
just keeps getting bigger and bigger. Everybody will be in it at the end. So, yeah, you guys. So we just got mic dropped. Did the PHP Roundtable just get mic dropped by Anthony Ferrara? I think it did.
Everybody in here is on.
Yes, and we definitely.
And
want
they're also on the
everyone-
town hall.
Yes.
Come on, come on.
They're all on the town table.
If you're drunk, you qualify for the town hall.
I just have one question. As if we're on the round table, where are the square table?
Who's got a question?
Semantics. All right, do we have another question from the audience? Jeremy, please.
Yay, Mr. Jeremy Lindblom.
Hello. Do I need to like get my head in here? Yeah, I know. I mean, that's.
I did not mean to make that a crotch shot. I apologize. I'm doing like 15 million things right here.
So I don't actually know much about HTTP2. Thanks for setting me up for that.
No problem. Anytime.
My question it circles back to kind of HAL and hypermedia stuff. So I think the designs behind hypermedia stuff is really cool in theory, but how do people actually consume those APIs in a way that makes sense and is easy?
Excellent question.
Consuming
with Guzzle was the comment.
Yeah. Well, it depends on what you're using. Are you consuming it in JavaScript or in PHP? Or in PHP, yeah, somebody else answered.
Mike, go.
So I think again, going back to the hypermedia specs and kind of their design. Personally, I don't think that they're doing what they need to do. I think that we're going to see long term. It's not just a hypermedia spec. That's here's a link, go to that URL or URI, or that here's the action that's available. And with the action of what they can do, then I think the language can interpret it and say, okay, they want to do an edit on stuff. Let's go to this link, and it uses a put or patch.
Come back.
No more questions.
Well, yeah, that's not going. So I actually.
Where is it?
Aaron has lost it.
I can't say that word on the podcast.
There's nothing that hasn't been said already.
Yeah,
Oh.
the maturity rating's already there.
Yeah. I think I dropped the first one, so we're good.
So actually, I agree with what you said, Mike. But
Sorry, I muted that mic. Continue.
What?
Okay.
Wait,
to be fair,
his answer didn't even. No one even heard Mike.
No. Oh, that's true. Okay. We should explain what
Here
just
you go.
happened here.
Let's
okay,
repeat
so if you're
that
watching-
for everybody.
I think everyone was just watching Aaron laugh anyway.
Hey, hold on. Sorry, we need to explain. Okay, here's what happened. Sarah was playing with her mic and it was making sounds, so I had to mute it, right? So you're kind of swinging around. I didn't want to like interrupt and be like, "Hey, you're playing with the mic." So then.
It's because she's a woman.
No. And then.
Whoa.
Now wait a minute.
That's just funked up.
And then my computer power cord wouldn't reach, so I pulled the table closer, and then it crushed Phil Sturgeon's foot. And he's trying to be discreet about it, and I can't stop laughing this whole time. Mike's giving a serious response, and his mic is muted the whole time. So talking about edit points, just chop off the whole beginning.
It's going in the show.
Okay, so
but there's like a minute
fuck
of
all those edit points. It's all going in. So,
It wasn't on the mic anymore. All right, technical fun. All right, let's get serious.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Okay, just checking. I feel so special, by the way. Thank you. No, in regards to... Wait, which mic did you ask the question on?
You are special.
This one.
Oh, just your question again.
No, that was the other mic.
Oh, okay. What was the question?
Give us the microphone, ask the question, come on.
How client side?
Yeah, so I think the problem with the hypermedia we have today is that it's too simplistic in a certain regard, where we send back and say, here's your HAL response, this is the general resource, here's a link to that resource. We're not actually telling the client how to utilize that resource. And so I think what we need to see for that to happen with like PHP and other languages is to send back not just a resource, but action-based resources. So if you want to edit a user, give back a resource that's explicit to edit, and then has that resource and says, here are the methods available for that. Here's the point of the patch.
Yeah.
But what about if it's like a custom action and it doesn't fall into one of those things? How does the client then determine that? Like say for instance, maybe it's an order and it's a validate. You want to validate the item is in stock, for instance.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we'll ever truly be able to.
You know this one.
Oh, here we go. Yes. Oh, go ahead.
I set you up.
Yes, you did.
So, my
Hey, hold
philosophy
on.
is that
Welcome, Mr. Luke Stokes, to
Thank
the
you.
panel.
Like, I've been working on a hypermedia API for FoxyCart for the last couple of years. And my idea is that the out-of-bounds information always exists. It doesn't go away. You store it somewhere. So my idea is the link relationship relationship tells you enough you need to know, and with the How browser, nicely enough, that goes right to your documentation. The documentation tells the developer what to code to. They code to the link relationship, and the link relationship has meaning in the documentation. So if it's like a status update kind of custom thing, the documentation tells you that, and the developer has to figure that out some way. I can do a custom media type, and that might be an RFC that tells what that does, or I can do a link relationship that links to documentation, but somewhere it has to be developed and discovered by the developer. So my idea is it's like, hey, you can version by link relationships, you can do custom things by link relationships, but if we code to link relationships, that was my question earlier, like then it makes sense, and the documentation can tell a developer what to do. So as far as getting creative with how we consume that, it's going to be based on what we're doing. You know, it's like how much informational, value does that response need to have? Am I going to serialize it to some crazy object or not? It's like, well, iCal has meaning because of the RFC. If it's a custom thing for my system, then my documentation is going to tell you what to do. But either way, before I even make the request, I know what that link relationship is going to give me. And that's the value in that. And it's not AI. It's not some crazy magical thing. We're not there yet. Someday we might be. But until then, you read the documentation, you write your code to the link relationship, and you know what you're going to get.
Exactly. And it's actually funny because I was thinking about this in terms of SDKs for libraries, for APIs, and I thought, oh, this is stupid. But then when I started thinking about it, it allows you to basically say, okay, what are the meaningful actions? You give them meaningful names within the language. Underlying, it's going and actually using the link relationships in order to do that, but it abstracts it for the user so that they're only thinking of it in terms of their domain language.
Yes. So I have a follow-up question there.
Before you follow up really quick,
we didn't invite Jeremy onto this town hall, but he's...
Let's do it. We didn't invite Luke either, but hey. Actually, I kind of did.
Just to add to that, I think there's so much that we can do right now where coders, developers have to be involved because you can only learn so much. I do think that specs like RAML or Swagger, you guys should be using RAML, will help us with that as the machine can learn that.
If they code a link relationships and not URLs, but that's another.
But I think the other thing that really we don't take advantage of, especially with REST APIs, is code on demand. And I think that with time, when we have these hypermedia text links, we'll actually get the code back and be able to incorporate that. Where instead of saying, okay, I need a developer to figure out how this works, we'll be able to send some code back to handle that for us. Although before anything changes, I think that there's always a security risk with that, so there's a lot that needs to be figured out.
Well, I would actually like to take that one step further, and even if you're not sending code back, think of the security risks that are involved in all these relationships in the first place. I mean, there's a significant potential for abuse, and you're really, really trusting the person on the other side of that API to do what they're promising to do what they said they're going to do, and to not code you into a corner. And I'm not saying that that's necessarily a bad thing, but I think that's something that we need to be cognizant of as we move down towards those roads.
Which is why your API should be over SSL.
But
I mean that's
yes,
part of it. That helps you establish the trust chain.
You also need to do rate limiting on lots of things too. Well, yeah, rate limiting is a solution to some of those problems for sure.
Are you okay?
And Phil just died.
This moment's brought to you by Fuck was that? That's not even the strong stuff. It wasn't Booker's. I thought it might have been mixed.
So for those of you who have never been to a PHP conference, it basically goes like this. We try to discuss serious things about PHP, and Phil drinks.
Thank you.
This is in no way is an endorsement of drinking at PHP conferences.
Just showing what not
We had
to
all
do.
chosen to do this with no peer pressure.
There's a reason the Ramblecast is never broadcast live.
So I did have a follow-up question. So we talked about like how one of the ways to make HAL stuff usable is that there has to be some way to associate action names with it. But if you're doing that, aren't you essentially doing RPC?
You want to go? Yeah, okay. I mean, I have an answer, but you're like champing at the bit. Come on.
I'll take it then. I don't think you're doing RPC. With RPC, you have tightly coupled URLs. You're saying this is what it is. With the hypermedia, you're simply saying here's a resource and here's the actions for that resource. So if you did an action-driven hypermedia text link, you can actually say, I want to edit the user, give them the resource, here's the method that's being patched and put. I want to create a user, you can do the same link with the post method. So I don't think you're tightly coupled. I think you're providing more information for what they can actually do with that resource with where they're at in the application state.
I'm going to play complete and utter devil's advocate and say something that I completely and utterly don't believe, but just to make a counterpoint to that, RPC doesn't need to be tied to a URL. I mean, that's what SOAP and WSDL was originally designed for, and it was a really, really horrible abstraction in the end, but for what it was designed for, the simple RPC case, I mean, that seems to solve half of the problems you just said. Is that wrong?
Well, yeah. I mean, my thought on it is that that's what the Helios is. The hypermedia is the engine of application state, where you can actually say, hey, as the server, as the domain king who understands this domain better than anyone, I'm going to tell the client a little bit about what they can do next. And that's the whole point of being able to be kind of smart about what you can do next. And some of this discussion is kind of the difference between Siren and HAL. Siren gives you that action idea. Siren gives you a little more information to say, hey, this is where this thing I'm giving you has some context to it. This class, I think, is what they call it. You know, this class, it means something. But again, back to what I said before, the link relationship tells you that before you even make the request. You have to know what you're about to do, and like you're saying, you have to trust the server is going to give you that resource back that means something to you. And the developer, it's not magic. The AI isn't there yet. The developer has to know, hey, this is what I'm going to get back. And one of the things I hope more API developers think about, and we talked about earlier about how the client's going to evolve. Really, it's on the API server to help the client evolve by saying, I know a lot about this system, and I'm going to give you information that's going to bubble all the way up to user interface. So if the context changes, that link relationship may not be there. There might be a new link relationship you need to know about. That kind of information is we can make the server smart about the response, and again, the Helios is going to tell the client what to do next. That's going to bubble all the way to your user interface. So as you're structuring your hierarchy of your data and your API, you're thinking about how is this actually going to be used. Sure, there's things, you know, serendipity, things you haven't thought about, that's going to happen too, but you want to be able to say, to use this API correctly, you should be thinking in terms of these steps and this hierarchy, because that's how the data lends itself to.
And that gets away from the whole SOAP argument, so that's awesome.
Yeah, right.
To whack it back around to SOAP, because stuff that, go on, Davey, what are you saying?
I feel like Helios and all that kind of thing, hypermedia, it was billed as auto discovery. Like, we would never have to write another client, it would be magic. And I think as we've gone and used that, we've discovered that just can't be the case.
Yeah, I would actually say that it's exactly the opposite in practice. It's actually being explicit about what's available and what you can actually call versus magic auto discovery. Let's see if we can make it work. I would say if you want magic auto discovery, use XML RPC list methods or something. That gives you everything right off the bat. This is actually taking it to the very discrete action level. It's very granular. So what can I do next from here? I'm at this state. What are the possible states I can transition to? And for that, it's very manual. And it's giving you that information, but you as a developer now have to know what to do with the information.
I think a quick thing is I think one of the kind of everything's going to be magical and wonderful from this point on, and APIs are going to solve all the problems for us kind of thing. Is kind of how it was built. It's one of those situations where some people learn a little bit about something and then they go and give talks at conferences talking about the thing without really knowing what the fuck they're talking about, and it happens far too often.
No, I know. I'm saying.
Oh no, I
mean,
but like they give they give a talk about a thing that they just learned about, or they write a blog post about a thing they just learned about without really understanding the use. And it's all like, oh, but I've been doing that since I was 12, who knows? But 14 last week, how dare you? So one of the things that ends up happening is that people talk about these magical, wonderful things of Helios, and that the API will be self-discovering and wonderful and perfect. But that's not really what it's meant to be. It's not ever meant to be like you can write this one bit of code and then your code will work forever, regardless of changes and regardless of anything else. It's more about, it's really nice to be able to look at a API response, and without you knowing any of the business logic that goes into the response that you just got, you know what actions you can take next. So if you're looking at some sort of document, and I've been trying really hard for the last minute that I've been slowly making my point to work out a perfect example, and I've got nothing because I might be a bit drunk. But there's sometimes you get a big old JSON response, and you've got all this crazy stuff. I work for a company that's all about like you can carpooling and all this crazy stuff. You can based on these 25 different bits of JSON data, a ride might be active, inactive, expired, cancelled, something else. and you can do these other 100,000 things in response based on what's going on. So if we were to completely ignore the third or fourth whatever level of the REST maturity model, third, right? It's the fourth one. It's just number 3, and it's the fourth one.
It's like episode 6.
Moving on. If you were to
1 through
ignore,
3
if you were
don't
to ignore the very top level of the Richardson security model, maturity model, then you look at that information, you get this whole blob of data, and you've got 1s and 5s and 7s and strings and all this random stuff, and you have no idea what that means unless you're involved and you're privately in the company and you've been in the meetings that I missed and I got confused about it. Unless you know everything that's going on with the business domain logic, then you don't know what you can do next. You don't know if you can cancel that ride yet, or whether that canceling is going to cost you $5. You can't cancel it. There's all these different things that are happening. So the whole Hatios, the how linking to other things, isn't meant to be some magical, we can always just use this API forever and everything that ever happens is going to be great. It's meant to be, here are your current options. Ignoring exactly what the JSON document is, here are your next choices. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, there's one little clarification I want to make here, or not clarification, one little point. There's 2 levels that we're talking about here. There is the communication level, the protocol level, which Hatios and all of this does very, very well and can self-describe back and forth very well. And then there's the application level, which it doesn't do at all. I mean, yeah, it kind of gives you the link data, but you really need to know the documentation. You really need to know the domains that you're dealing with as a programmer in order to be able to interact. And the reason I bring up that meta-level split is because there's actually a great example of this self-discovery that's already in practice that a lot of people use today, which are the Google API client libraries, which actually do self-discover and change over time. Now, the API that you're dealing with, the actual objects that you're using and the methods you're calling don't change, but the underlying protocol is changing, because there may be bug fixes or they may need an additional piece of metadata in a specific API call. So they're able to actually generate the code underneath to handle this same abstraction at the high level, but change what's happening behind the scenes subtly.
Do Google APIs use self-discovery because every single week they change so drastically that your code doesn't work anymore?
No.
Just to add one more point to what Phil was talking
No
about.
bias.
With, the self-discovery or auto-discovery. I think we, you guys can call me on this, make fun of me, but I'm going to make a call. I think we have to remember that APIs are still very young. Back in 2005, we had 500 public APIs.
I'm sorry.
Paul
Paul
Really,
Jones joined
Paul?
us and immediately caused a party foul.
What the hell?
They have to use this room for a wedding in the morning. What have you done?
You are being ejected, Mr. Jones.
Keeping the puns
Code
high.
of conduct.
Keeping track.
Jeremy P. Jones over there.
Oh, it's not. The PM is Pun Master Jones. Is that what we're going
I like
for?
You and I are the only ones. There's the 2 of us left.
Welcome to Pun Town
with
Hall.
that, I'm all for puns, but that's too much for me. But yeah, so I think what we're looking at is, APIs are still very young. In 2005 we had like 500 public APIs. 2010 it was like 10,000 APIs. 2013 it was 10,000 APIs. And that just means that REST is finally getting utilized. I'm still live. I'm not muted, right?
I can hear you.
Okay, I'm just checking. Not yet. So I think as we see APIs evolve, as we see the technology used in more and more, and as we see things include code on demand, I think we'll start to see more auto-discovery and more self-correcting applications, self-healing applications. But I think we're still ways down the road, but I think someday it's going to happen. It'll be called Skynet.
We can go for a while.
Yeah, I was about to say, why don't we switch gears a little bit and just kind of turn this laptop around that way forever for the rest of this thing, and then just get the mics going for all you guys who are here at Sunshine PHP, and just talk a little bit about I thought it'd be a good idea if we said one thing we learned from a speaker this week.
Don't
Let's go
drink and
around
try to
one
your
at a
talk.
time.
They've said nothing
like a
useful the
campfire.
entire time I've been here. I don't.
What?
That's a joke, but no one.
No.
Now I feel bad.
You feel bad?
I feel really
So yeah, let's just and I want to if you're watching live, if you're like one of the two people actually watching, I'm posting our Google Hangout.
Our
link.
viewers are Davey.
And so you guys can join us as well and kind of be here not just in spirit but in digitalness with ones and zeros. And I'm posting that in just a second. So you guys be thinking, because I'm going to turn this around, we'll hand the mics out and it'll just be one giant round table. And maybe you got a topic that you want to talk about. Maybe we can all just kind of bring something up and make.
And we have an entire 3 minutes to do this.
Yep, we got 3.
Because that hot tub is cooling off.
No, you can go, it'll be informal. We might lose this guy, but we'll have other people come in. It'll be good. So I'm posting the tweet. Join the conversation.
I have a question.
Wait, who's Davey?
This is directed at you, Phil. When can I actually be on the real town hall?
Oh.
Never. Over my dead body, so give it a week.
2 horrible accents is way too many horrible accents.
You're on it right now, so this counts.
No, this doesn't count.
Forever.
This isn't actually getting published, right? Please.
Larry Garfield just left.
We have yet to have the shame to not publish. And I had that one on my podcast.
Larry Garfield just returned. It's okay. I take back what I said about him. I'm sorry.
Oh.
That is the first pun that Jeremy has said all weekend that I didn't hate disgustingly. That was a cracking pun, so well played. Well played. The cracking thing was a mistake. I didn't actually realize I was making it. Larry, do you want to come and join us? We can talk about APIs and code.
Anybody
and things.
who wants to join.
We're also entering hour 7 of the podcast, so if you'd like to come and...
Seriously, anybody who's got anything they want to discuss, I don't even hear me on the thing. Oh, boy, I'm numbered 4. Here we go. Now we can hear me. Yeah, so if you guys have anything you want to say, I know you guys... Anybody, just come on. It's a big round table. Let's just talk.
Does my arm not? Does my arm not count?
It's a discussion. Let's just.
I just wanted to say that I did learn something this weekend, and what I learned is that British people can't pronounce H correctly, and I was just hoping that Phil would say HTTP just one more time.
HTTP.
I have a problem with this.
Just
I don't know what you're
realize
talking
the
about.
proper pronunciation.
Davey ain't British. He can fuck off with that.
Go back to the Midlands.
Oh, hang on. Sorry. So one wonderful thing about British people... Sorry, I forgot that I have a microphone. One wonderful thing about British people is that we all talk completely differently to each other. I can walk for 8 miles and not know what the fuck they're saying back in my country. So Welsh people are really fucking different. So I've already said HTTP, and that's how we sound in Bristol. And now he's going to give it a little go from the Welsh angle.
Hey, Davey. Hey, Davey.
Hey, it's not just Davey.
Who's this? Who?
Check it out.
Hey, Trevor's here. Hey, Trevor.
Whoa!
Well, hey!
How about that,
Steve? So are we ready? HTTP.
Thank you.
Oh, it's a pleasure.
Oh, that was wonderful.
HTTP. What's the problem?
I'm not British.
HTTP.
I'm not British,
weird.
but I have an entry. It's the Hutatapa.
All right, Jersey.
Or if you're using SSL, it's the Hutatapaz.
I have a question for the panel. JSON XML discussed.
No.
Please.
Why?
I don't even know what there is to say.
Why would you even?
If you need a schema, use XML. If you don't need a schema, don't use XML.
So,
Then you go join IBM.
I've actually got a question that I'd like to ask myself for my podcast.
I deal with this all the time, people. This is my life.
No, I'm actually not going to answer this one, but it is about APIs.
I don't believe you.
Might. So, all right, calm down, Vice. So So one of the common things that comes up in API development that I've noticed, and I chat to other API developers, I chat to people like Mike who's chatting about best practices, and chat to all these people that are talking about how to make APIs and make them good. Everyone's saying REST is a great way of going. Wait, is someone being a dick and it's not me? What's going on? Is your favorite number 7?
You remember that time you got to the point? It was now.
You guys suck.
All right. I know
thought
you
we were
love your
friends.
accent, but we don't love your accent.
I'll start talking American.
America.
Get her done.
I'm introducing a complex fucking situation. I can't just do that in 4 seconds.
Holy shit.
I know that you're only smart enough to understand things that happen in a 5-second sentence, but I'm trying to introduce a complex point. Anyway, okay. Oh, that's how fucking angry I am.
He just tried to kick over the table for the viewers at home.
Table flip.
Flip that shit if you don't let me finish my point. So one of the complex things that I've been through as a REST developer, as an API developer, is that everyone's trying to make an API and they're trying to make it self-documented. They're trying to make it really clear what their responses are. They're trying to document the whole thing. Hilariously, over time, things like RAML have been mentioned by Mike. RAML, Swagger, API Blueprint, all these different systems are being introduced to help us document an API and the responses and the requests and what they are. And it sounds a fucking lot like we're trying to recreate WSDLs. So, does anyone have any input? Like, REST is amazing because you don't need WSDLs, but then also we're trying to recreate WSDLs.
Them
Who
spotting
has
words.
thoughts on that? Yeah,
Them
I know
words.
that's contentious as fuck.
I think part of the
This is why I like HAL, because HAL is not a structured system. It's very basic as to what it does, and it leaves everything else up to the application domain logic. So it's like you don't have to get too complicated with it. It just does this. If you can parse that, you're good to go. So I that's why I don't like JSON schema. That's why I don't like all these other systems. That it's like we already have RPC and WSDL and all that. We don't want to recreate that. We don't want tight coupling. The whole point of a great hypermedia Helios REST system is that there's loose coupling. The client and the server can evolve independently. That's part of the constraint. If you don't have that strong constraint, then it's like, what's the point? So when we serve up a HAL response, we don't say it's a specific, this resource. It's just a HAL response. And you read the documentation, you get value out of it, you can modify it, you can change it, it can add new properties, but it's not this tight constraint. I agree with you. I've had that same frustration when people are like, oh, it's going to do all this crazy stuff. And it's like, well, then we already did that. We're reinventing what we're trying to get away from. What's the point of that?
we do that all the time. That's, I think, what we call programming.
Yes.
So,
It's almost state machine.
so I have to respond to that.
Went back to 10.
I have to respond to that because I'm wearing the Ramel shirt really quick. Just to talk about the specs. We have to understand why the specs were created. Swagger was not created to be a WSDL, to be a contract negotiator. It was created to be a documentation tool to make documentation easier for developers. And that's what kind of led to RAML, which was designed to be the RESTful API modeling language. And that goes with Dr. Roy Fielding's idea that we're really suck at design. It's really easy to make an API that you can use for a month, 2 months, a year. What happens when you need to extend the API? How are you make it flexible enough that it's thought out long term? And that's really what the specs are for, was for the long-term modeling development, and then using that same spec for documentation, interaction, testing to reduce the workload, not create more.
So I think part of the thing that people sometimes forget is that REST is not supposed to be completely self-documenting. It's not supposed to be a system where a program that knows nothing about an API can look at it and know everything there is to know. That's not actually the intent. It's not supposed to be magic. The idea is low overhead for defining the pieces, and the system automatically knows the relationships. What's on the other end of that relationship and how to deal with the content, how to deal with the payload. That's not part of it being REST. You can have a arbitrarily defined, undocumented payload and it still be REST, or it can be documented in whatever format you feel like. The important part of REST is link relationships that you can rely on, and you don't care about specific IDs to randomly, dig into the database. That's it. All this other stuff about, formally defining all of the properties of an object has value, has situations where it's okay, but that is not a prerequisite for something being REST.
That's
as one of the authors of the first kind of WSDL generator in PHP, I'd like to defend WSDL. I can't, but I'd like to. It's a terrible, terrible thing, and I think anytime we have complex systems, we do need to describe them somehow. It sounds like RAML is definitely a better way to go than WSDL ever was. Also, please don't shake the whiskey. That's a horrible thing.
Oh my god.
So one thing.
Good.
Oh, go on. No, I mean I've said one or two things already so far. So.
No way.
I was going to say that the bourbon was good.
The bourbon is good.
The bourbon's fantastic.
And Phil just got called out.
I don't know what Jeremy just said, but I think he's been drinking for 5 days straight, so I don't understand anymore.
Like you haven't.
I've been drinking for 3 days straight.
And how many of those days?
Worst con is the conference that never ends.
Only once was I questioned by the police about my antics. No, I've completely forgot my point. Sarah just kicked the shit out of my point.
So Jeremy,
Edit point, please.
Did you? Can you? I'm putting you on the spot. What is one thing you learned in this conference?
Serious thing, Jeremy McCullough. Serious time.
Oh god. Good luck.
Come on, make it real.
Why did you pick him for a serious answer?
I learned that Aaron has an amazing budget for slide design.
That is so true.
So I guess I remember my point, which was.
Phil Sturgeon, ladies and gentlemen.
We'd also like to welcome our 78th guest to the Town Hall podcast, which is Paul Jones. Now, my point being that, like, whilst I know that a big benefit of REST is that you don't need a WSDL, the reason I brought it up, like, I asked the question knowing it, but I asked the question, with REST, you don't need a WSDL. With SOAP, you have to have a WSDL there to be able to use that shit, and that's just how it works. But with REST, you don't need a WSDL, but you also kind of want to make one afterwards. And we end up in this weird situation where you can use it really easily, but then we have no way of describing what any of that shit is or what it does or how it works. And then you try and make this documentation, and you can kind of keep it up to date for a while, but then you kind of have to make this other model somehow. And then we've got Emson and fucking Ramel and Siren and all this other shit.
Let me, because I have an honest point to bring out here. We keep trying to layer on complexity onto our systems so that way we can treat them simply, right? We keep
Jeremy just
okay,
fell.
this is just getting
Jeremy drop.
Okay, instead of mic drop, it was a Jeremy drop. But no, we keep laying on all of this. Okay, Jeremy just hurt himself. Jeremy, down here, you need to be like back there.
Sorry for the confusion.
Carry on.
Try to get on my level.
I do have a.
It's not much higher.
I do have a question. When I go ahead.
Yeah. So my point is, we keep layering all this complexity because we're getting away from these simple. Jesus Christ.
In his defense, he's having the cramp very quietly. It's all of you that are making noise.
Sorry. Welcome to the PHP Town Hall. We are the most professional fucking podcast you will ever listen to.
I agree. This is officially a town hall podcast.
We've broken Sarah.
There is no longer a round table happening.
It was a legitimate cramp. I've been.
Sarah has left the house.
No, I've been drinking Basil
These are the
Hayes.
people that manage the software that runs your company.
So I had a joke, but it's not going to top whatever just happened. So here, you can have the mic back.
Are you flailing on the floor like a fish?
Let me actually make a real point here. So we keep layering all these layers of complexity because we don't have simple systems. We're trying to build simple systems by adding more complexity to try to expose simplicity. Why can't we take a step back and look at what was built in the 1960s and 1970s by Bell Labs with Unix and the Unix systems, where you have these very, very tiny systems that do very, very simple and small things, yet allow you to build these incredibly massive and incredibly powerful tool operations to work on real-world data. Like, I don't know. I just feel like we keep building all of these multi-letter acronyms of these ridiculously big systems to try to describe concepts when what I think we should be doing is trying to strip away all that garbage and just get down to the core of things.
So
this is why I've been
I
saying.
think.
But they had to
Okay, Grandpa.
solder relays together. And
Okay, Grandpa.
trusted the solder guns.
Hey, I walked uphill both ways to get to the server back in my day.
Stuff it, Junior.
There's a
Oh, you need
huge
to
bottle of
ask
Kraken
questions
somewhere.
into the microphone when you have a question.
All right. So in response to that, though, I would say maybe in the PHP. Oh, fuck this.
Is there any amount of editing?
This is funked up.
Fuck this shit, Mike.
Funked up.
Is there any amount of
Fuck
editing
you
that can
too.
possibly save this? Zero. There's no fucking
This is not
prayer.
releasing.
They don't invite me on the town hall.
It must be way too much with our editor.
Did you just get
$1,000
unsponsored? Does that mean you have to pay Rove back for the drinks?
Is Rogue paying for the editing? That's all be up for that.
Don't forget to hire Rove for all your PHP needs. We are the kick-ass PHP developers. If there's one thing I've learned at Sunshine, it's Rove are excellent. Thank you.
Most
And
professional.
this sponsorship
podcast
request was made by a man wearing sunglasses
At 9 p.m.
roughly 10 o'clock
10
on a very
oh my God,
dark
it's 11.
evening.
Holy shit. I
Inside.
started it early. All right.
So this
I have
has
an
turned
actual
into a Zoom
response
performance.
to the real question. All right. Okay. So in response to what Anthony said, which was serious, I think there's been a movement for that, maybe outside of the PHP community, but I would definitely say Node and Go communities have really moved towards distributed small services that do one small thing and do it well. And I think there's been a real push for that there. Maybe that hasn't made it to the whole overall design architecture thing that we see in like HTTP spec and things that kind of govern all languages. But I think there are communities that do push that, and that's something we can definitely do in PHP with a concerted effort.
So you couldn't see me on video, but I violently agree.
This is a new one for us people. Oh yeah.
Anthony Ferreira has been on 3 to 4 town halls in the past, and usually we scream at each other, and then a week later we go for a beer and apologize. But we actually agreed about something.
This is the first time me and Anthony have ever agreed.
Terrifying.
I enjoy it. Except for what beer we should order. All right.
So I'm going to propose something to the entire group here, and I think that this currently might be an absolute shit show. So Davey agrees. Thanks for checking in there, Davey, with your face laugh.
Steez.
Steez. A little bit of
Thank you,
steez.
Trevor, and also fuck you, Davey, for not laughing at my joke. So.
Look, you haven't told one yet.
He's on mute. He can't hear
So my follow-up point might be: let's see how many of the people right here can fit in that hot tub, and let's call it a fucking day. How do you feel? How do you feel?
Any last final words?
I'm jealous.
I can be there in 4 hours.
Oh, no, I won't take this one. That's horrible. Well, Cal left, right? Unfortunately. Daddy left. I wanted to reiterate something he said in the closing argument, with the closing keynote that I was hoping he could say, is we have a really great community, and taking back from what you said, what I learned is that I saw people that were really passionate about, like professionals are really passionate about what they do every day, speak, but I also saw people that were really passionate about like a pet project speak. It may have been their first time talking. Hey guys. And to read what Cal said as well. Hey guys. You need to get involved in your local users group.
Hey guys. He's making like an actual major legit point.
I was
here.
gonna like cry and everything.
We were
Please continue.
finally
Hold
saying
on.
something serious, guys.
Why do you have to ruin every nice thing? Why can't we have one nice thing?
This is definitely
All right.
why we can't have nice things.
Please continue.
I just want to read what he said, but he wasn't here to say it for him. Get involved in your local user group and get involved in conferences. And if you like something, speak about it. And eventually you'll get to come and see all of us. That's it.
The best fucking ending. Good
Well
job.
said,
Thank
well
you,
said.
sir. We were over. That was our fucking mic drop. Steve.
I actually wanted
bring up a serious topic. but
Who
I think
invited
that
an
just shut it
audience
all
member
down.
that
Like,
wasn't
I
a
think we're done.
douchebag? Because I didn't understand why that just happened.
That is a mic drop. Let's go.
Thanks for joining us today for the PHP Town Hall, not PHP Roundtable podcast. PHP Round Hall.
It's PHP Round Hall. Come on.
The episode that will never be published on any of our websites. I'm just kidding. Maybe. See. Yeah, we'll do it. We'll do it again. We'll try it again maybe tomorrow. Thanks for joining us, guys. Thanks, Trevor and Davey. Wow, somebody almost split their head open here. We missed you guys. Wish you could be here with us.
Sarah just literally did a mic drop of Mike. It was brilliant.
She dropped Mike. She dropped Mike Rowe. Why? Why did she do this?
Oh, they
mic
literally
drop.
dropped Mike. That was the mic drop. They picked up Mike and dropped him.
Hello.
Ask for it. Ask for the.
Oh. We'll go for the mic drop.
Done.
Nice. I think I heard something.
Sorry, I missed it. Bye, guys.
See ya.
Peace.